Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about a little-known topic of artificial intelligence, or AI. And I'm Alex Konrad from Forbes. I'm joined here by Scott Belsky, who is an executive at Adobe and a prolific angel investor and a founder. And I think I've written about probably 5 different things you've done. So Scott, do you want to tell the audience kind of how you spend your time right now?
Sure. Well, my obsession is generally product. It's generally things for the creative industry. As the founder of Behance, I've kind of been in the creative industry for well over a decade. Most recently, overseeing all of our creative at Adobe and thinking also about new technologies and a few acquisitions along the way. It's been an exciting time. I feel like it's one of those moments where months of progress happens in a day. So nice time to be alive.
Absolutely. So you're at Adobe, and ChatGPT drops. Are you already playing with AI at this time? Is there a aha moment where you're like, everybody get in this tool right now? What is the sort of eureka moment internally last year or before that gets you thinking about this a lot?
Yeah, well, the best case scenario is for a company to always be kind of doing things, progressing into new technology, but then there are like realization moments of like applicability. And so, for us, we've had artificial intelligence powered capabilities in our tools for many years. Things like content aware fill that replaces something in Photoshop, and now in video, like replaces a moving object in video, and all these sorts of things, neural filters, a few other features over the years that became pretty popular. But on the generative AI side, certainly there was like the realization moment of, well, wow, like everything's going to change, right? I mean, in terms of how customers use a product and get things done without prior knowledge. We're always trying to reduce the learning curve. We're always trying to increase creative confidence, which ultimately increases the top of our funnel and the base of our business. And certainly generative AI has been one of those things, and we see relevance across the entire product lineup.
So I know we're live streamed, so bear with me if you're watching remotely. But for everyone in the audience, I'm just curious. Please raise your hand if you've played with ChatGPT. Okay, that's most people in the audience. What about if you've used an Adobe tool at some point? Even more hands. What about if you've used an Adobe AI tool? Okay, so almost nobody. Scott, what are the odds they've used an Adobe AI tool at some point, but they don't realize it?
Yeah, quite high. For example, Acrobat. If you have Acrobat, we have a tool called, we have a filter or a mode called liquid mode, where it takes any PDF with any sort of weird construed graphs and data and whatever else, and then basically makes it presented in a responsive format. And that was trained off of literally hundreds of millions of PDFs and is all driven by artificial intelligence. And then of course, all of our products, including Photoshop and Lightroom, all the auto make better, auto correct, whatever stuff is now at this point powered by pretty robust models.
This is one of the things I think is like really interesting about the AI debate today, is that the headlines, and we at Forbes are trying to improve the conversation, but also are guilty of this to some extent, that the biggest headlines will be Sam Altman talking about artificial general intelligence. And when will the AI take over from humans, and sort of these really kind of long-term questions. But then in your actual workflow and in your day-to-day, there are these kind of really boring little uses of AI that are already in our workflow, right? So if you're a creative using Adobe, you are using AI, just not necessarily like a ChatGPT API, right?
Well, yeah, and I think the dirty little secret in technology is that the product succeeds because of the user's experience of the technology, not the technology. And yet we like to write about the technology because it's cool and whatever. Our customers, have ideas, and then there's lots and lots and lots and lots of workflow after every idea. And so our general thesis is that if you can reduce the amounts of workflow that's required after an idea, you can actually make more ideas happen, right? And so it's all about integrating some of these technologies to reduce workflow or automate workflow. And if you ask any great creative, like what makes them great, it's having more surface area of discovery. It's having more time to see more possible solutions so that they can have more choices of which path to follow. what an amazing opportunity for AI to actually suggest, instead of like a whole room of interns, here's some amazing new possibilities, and then you can have more ideas of what to pursue.
Something definitely has changed recently, though. Like, 2 years ago, the CEO of Forbes would not be asking me to give a lunch and learn about AI to like the Forbes sales team. And obviously, I think for a lot of people in the audience, there is sort of a sea change that it feels like has happened. So from your perspective, having gone through multiple tech cycles, what exactly would you say is really new and different and exciting about where we are today versus what we could do with some of these tools 2 years ago?
Well, I think that one of the big things is it comes back to this notion of creative confidence, and I often think about it this way, we're peak creative confident, most of us, at 3 years old. It's when we're drawing and painting and, doing things, and we show proudly to our teachers or our parents, and it's like, wow, like I am so creatively confident. And then sadly, maybe 5, 6, 7, it starts to go downhill as we realize we don't possess skills that other people possess, and oh, that's actually better than what I made. And then we all sort of feel constrained by our capabilities. And so there's something happening right now where suddenly creative confidence is going up, not down, based on this new technology. The idea of coming up with a prompt and having like no workflow required to visualize it is super compelling. Now, I also think that, if you look at the spectrum of people, on creativity, most of us are output oriented. We just want to get something done, and we actually don't care whether the person's standing to the left or the right, or what the hue of the sky is, or whatever else. And then there's the process-oriented creative on the other side, which is our core business historically. And I think that there's been very little available on the output-oriented creative. That's why you had to hire people or use templates or whatever else. And so that's all changing now too. So my outlook for this is that creative confidence across humanity is going to go up suddenly. And the implications of that, I think, for people's careers, for people's creativity, it's super exciting.
Now, there have been concerns from some creatives, yep. Whether they're artists or illustrators or others who do use Adobe tools, who worry that their work can be copied, or it's kind of feeding the algorithm in a way that makes it harder for them to differentiate and kind of be compensated and recognized for their work. You guys make tools for these creators, and so is there a tension point between kind of what the technology can do to kind of catch up some people and the outputs that some of your most successful users are currently making?
Well, two thoughts on that. Number one is on how to really make this work for creatives and also protect them to some degree. There's ideas we're exploring, like Behance has 40 million creatives in there, and we could actually block the usage of those names in the prompts that people use, such that people can't leverage someone else's style without their permission or without compensating them. Maybe there's a marketplace of styles, where you put in a prompt for a house of whatever, and then it gives you options of people's styles that you can apply, and maybe you can pay to use someone's style. So finding ways to monetize people's unique style, I think, is a new opportunity for creative professionals, for sure. I also think that there's something that we launched called the Content Authenticity Initiative, which basically puts metadata in every asset that is generated by generative AI that actually attributes it to the model. And we can actually start to track what content was used to train for what output. There's some attribution stuff that we can do as well. The second comment, though, is that creativity is the world's greatest recycling program. Everyone always builds on everything else that they see. Every creative process typically starts with a mood board. What is a mood board? It's basically stuff that inspires you that you're going to then reference and utilize in the creation of something new. And so in some ways, generative AI is doing that as well. And we certainly can't kind of hide from this advancement. We have to find ways to make it work for creatives and make them more productive.
Do you think that it'll be the responsibility of a company like Adobe to be getting that right? Or how much responsibility will be with OpenAI or Stability AI or these model providers as well?
Well, I think it's certainly our opportunity and responsibility to figure this out. Some of these other companies that are building new tools with generative AI that have no creative community that they serve, that have no tools that they've ever made, they have actually no obligation. They have no customer base yet to explain, how they're training their models and that's what's allowing them to kind of run rampantly. I think that we're in a different position. We serve the creative community, and so we actually have to. And it's a good thing, like to be forced to navigate that and be very transparent and determine what are the ethics around what can be used as training data and how to ensure that people understand how something was made when they see it.
So when you're meeting with important customers or partners for Adobe, what is the vibe? Is it just excitement? Is it kind of like caution? Are people nervous? What typically are you having to explain to folks who are kind of trying to figure out this, their strategy here and how you guys fit into it?
Well, a couple takeaways. One is a lot of our very big enterprise customers are very concerned about using generative AI without understanding how it was trained. They don't see it as viable for commercial use. In a similar way to using a stock image and making sure that if you're going to use it in a campaign, you better damn right have rights for it, and model releases and everything else. There's that level of scrutiny and concern around the viability for commercial use. So that's one piece of feedback we've gotten, which I think is going to impact our product roadmap and how we train, et cetera. I think the other thing is that this has to fit into the overall workflows of the organization. When you're making content and then you are adjusting that content for different locales, right, and different cultures and whatever else, that there's a lot of work to be done in that our customers are very anxious to find more effective ways of doing. And so some of the use cases of generative AI that we see on social media that are so wow, actually the more practical ones that may end up really being the business opportunity are things that just enable content velocity and personalization.
Yeah, so we published a video on YouTube at Forbes about AI that's been watched, I think, 500,000 times. And I was shocked to find out from our video team that we were using Adobe AI in that video, but it was just to improve the audio quality of a Zoom interview to make it sound like the person was in the room. That to me feels like non-controversial use, right? I'd find it hard to believe that anyone is threatened by that. And our video team loved it. But there are going to be use cases that could have a mixed reaction, right? I mean, inevitably, as you guys embed more of these tools, would that be kind of on the company to decide, how much they want to go down this road?
Well, ultimately, I think we need to give all these options to our customers. So there are already third-party plugins with whether it's OpenAI or Stable Diffusion-powered models, in Photoshop, right? That are just third parties make them, and some customers use them, but we just need to give our customers options, and we need to be very thoughtful about how we surface these capabilities in the workflows to ultimately serve their intended outcomes. But it has to go down to customer choice.
So we've talked a lot about Adobe. You obviously have an investment portfolio. You meet with startups, and you have for a long time. Outside of Adobe, what do you find most exciting about kind of the use cases you're seeing or the opportunities that this AI is unlocking? And is there anything that you find uncool or concerning that you're like, I don't want to go there?
Well, I am noticing a pattern in my inbox lately that some of you are probably seeing as well, where what was a year and a half ago, NFT as a service startups that just, the first one came in, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And then it was like another one, another one, another one, another one. It was like, oh my gosh, dozens of companies are building these like NFT creator blah, 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 blahs. The same thing is happening right now with interfaces being built on top of the same models that we're all familiar with. Different nuances for different target audiences, somewhat different use cases, and there's just so many of them. And so that gives me some caution. As I think about what makes some of these features or some of these businesses as opposed to features, I think about more customer centricity around like the workflow and the various moving parts and the collaborations that happen around the work and everything else. And I look for companies also that recognize that it's actually maybe more about the data than it is about the sort of model. It's more about the sources of the data and making sure that companies that have their own like proprietary data can like leverage that into enabling something that one of these generalized models can't. And so I'm looking for very like vertically specific approaches that are ultimately protected by a proprietary source of data.
Some people think that a lot of these kind of startup opportunities will evaporate over time. That going for a vertical will not actually be long-term defensible because there's going to be revenge of the big tech companies, and Google or Microsoft through OpenAI or whatever. That a lot of these huge companies will get close enough that a lot of the kind of startup opportunities here will not actually last, more than, let's say, the next year or two. What's kind of your sense of, on the optimism to pessimism scale, where are you kind of thinking about what will be a long-term opportunity versus something that gets gobbled up by the big guys?
Well, it's unpopular to say these days, but I'm excited by the consumer opportunity side, because consumers are, we make decisions for a whole suite of different reasons, right? On the enterprise, it's like if Microsoft allows you to just turn on a service and it just lights up across the enterprise, that's a really easy value proposition to sell. But on the consumer side, we actually we care about the new and novel brand, behind something that enriches our life. I think that we're going to have entirely new ways of making purchase decisions, as consumers that are powered by AI. And there might be a new brand that emerges that enables that. Health, the consumer experience in navigating your own health, taking all the data of devices like this, collected over your years, coupled and compared with a group of people, plus like what vitamins you're taking, plus what your lab results are from the doctor, and then put all that together and then have a conversation with a sentient brand that's something new. I think people would actually probably prefer it not be Google in this instance, right? But something that is sort of new and specialized. So I do think that there will be AI native brands that emerge. I'm more excited maybe about some of the consumer ones than some of the enterprise ones for the reasons you cited.
Some people wonder, is this Web3 all over again? Obviously, luckily, Adobe didn't pivot to the metaverse last year, so it's easier for you guys than some. But there are people who say this feels just crazy frothy, over-exuberant. The tech industry wanted something to be excited about, and they're willing this to be kind of the next big topic. How do you separate the froth from the substance here?
Yeah, well, from a more pragmatic perspective, Web3 did not promise to reduce the workflow, the work that has to be done across any idea or action in the organization. In fact, it added more friction and more work. And there are parts of that world that are still interesting to me and that might emerge to be important over time. But this is different. I mean, the work is work, right? And there's no one who would rather take an hour or 10 minutes to do something that could be done in 1 second. And so that the value of that across every function of an organization, I think will be more akin to the sort of trend of collaborative products replacing every sort of function in an organization. There's a whole suite of startups that have actually been quite successful, reimagining every function of the enterprise to be more collaborative and web-based as opposed to like old clunky on-premise software. And so similarly, I think that AI will do the same thing to reduce the workflow around all these job functions. And we're starting to see a lot of examples of that, and I think we are in early days of that.
The opener this morning, while we were getting ready backstage, was kind of a long bit where Mark Suster from Upfront tried to do his speech using a GPT tool, and it went disastrously wrong. And the sort of hallucinations and inaccuracy have kind of gone viral in ways that I think if I'm a large business, I might be like, this doesn't feel quite ready, or like, this is fun to play with, but we can't trust our business on one of these tools today.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be a fair concern? And if so, how long would a big corporation want to kind of wait and see a little bit?
Yeah. I call this the final mile problem. And I look at like self-driving, for example. It's like you can get 99% of your way there, but then that last 1%, like people are not willing to die 1% of the time, right? And so there's a final mile problem in some of these things. Similarly, whenever you have any like public representation of your company, publishing blog posts in the company's name. Like, you can't take a risk of one sentence portraying your brand poorly, right? And so where are these final miles the most hard, right? And where are they not important? For example, in customer service, if you know you're interacting with a bot, you're going to have a degree of forgiveness because you're going to know. And therefore, if there is something that's said that doesn't sound right, you're not going to be like, oh my God.
And the stakes are often low in that case.
Correct.
Right?
So it's low stakes stuff. The final mile doesn't have to be as strong. But I think that there's some stuff like what you're describing. The second thing is that what's amazing to me, and seeing all the technology that's coming in the lab, we are entering an age where we will no longer be able to believe our eyes. And it's pretty profound. Like, you're going to be able to, with 30 seconds of recording of your own voice, anyone can make you say anything with audio, and increasingly then can represent you in video via AI. And then suddenly everything will be, nothing will can be assumed to be real. It's like trust but verify will become like verify then trust. We're going to have to verify first that this is actually a human before we can even determine whether we can trust what the person's saying, right? And so I think that what we're going to have to do is, humanity is going to obviously have to evolve to sort of have that question of, wait, is this real, before we even take anything seriously.
Okay, this is delicious. I have a couple questions here. So first let's take what is real. So a Hollywood exec who was here yesterday, said, "Oh, James Cameron did a lot using kind of AI and CGI with Avatar, but he had to make them animals. Mm-hmm. Because if it's a human, it still has that uncanny valley weird factor. Where we've seen in entertainment some of these tools be used, it has been to start a conversation or to provoke debate, but it hasn't felt the same. Do you think that changes? Do you think that matters in the long term, or does culture accept maybe that uncanny valley and get used to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, on the entertainment side of things, I think our brains are a lot more malleable. And I remember when I first got my first high definition TV, and it was actually kind of jarring at first. I don't know about all of you, but when you started to see like the actors' makeup and stuff, and you started to get like the pores in someone's face, it almost took some of the entertainment value out of it. I felt like it was a little too real.
And they've said that with 4K, some old movies suddenly, look completely different than how they were intended, right?
Exactly. So I think we have some ability to adjust ourselves, but I do think that, much like the notion of the verified checkmark that has kind of become butchered more lately, but I do think that when we see media in the future, we're going to want to know whether that media is verified or not. And what I think by verified, I don't mean that it doesn't use AI or synthetic or whatever. Verified just means that you can see how it was made. And so the opportunity to see the tools and the changes that were made to media that we consume is going to be important. If you see some image in the New York Times captured on the front lines in the Ukraine, you're going to want to know that it was captured by this person using this camera, edited in Lightroom, but not manipulated in Lightroom, just made it, contrast changed in Lightroom. And, does that make you trust it? Versus if it's not verified, you're going to start to wonder, was this just generated?
But who verifies? Because, Elon's anti-woke AI, if that ever happens, may have a very different understanding of what is real than...
Yeah, and again, verifying can't mean that it's true. It just needs to mean that it has provenance. And so that's the way I think about it, is that assets, if we're trying to be creative here and solve this problem, and I'm being a little, utopia for a moment, but imagine if the provenance of an image, like how it was made, is tracked through the process, through metadata. Mm-hmm. And then, if you want to take a screenshot of it and share it as just an image, fine, but people will, again, gradually be trained to not trust it fully, right? And if they see how it was made, just like if they can see that you're verified and they can see that you have a website and they know that you're a real reporter, I just think that those sorts of things are going to matter more.
Won't that be exhausting, though, to have to check, validate everything? Like an essay comes in, you run an AI to check if the AI was used to plagiarize, or similarly, Adobe offers a tool that tells us that this was a synthetic audio. And we have to kind of now run that every single time content is made. Is that just the future that we're going to be facing?
To some degree. But I do also think that the number of platforms that need to be a part of this in order for the masses, or the majority of us to have access to some of this information, there aren't so many that reach so many people. So, but that is one of the challenges we all get to navigate together.
But they should be excited, right?
But we should be pumped. Yeah, no, it's empowering technology, but with great opportunity. What do they say? Comes great responsibility. This is
Ending on another Hollywood line. Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, so much for the insights. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.